Hello there and welcome back to this Flutter course. So we're going to start actually learning about Dart today, where we're going to be going over data types. So data types are simply types of variables that we can have, and variables are just things that store data. We're going to go over them in the next lesson. But since this course does require at least a little bit of programming knowledge, you should already have a good idea of what data types are. And so in this video, we're just going to be taking a look at the Dart data types, and we're not going to go too deep into what exactly they are and each of them do. So let's go ahead and get into this. So first of all, we have these data types, the sort of what I would label. Now this isn't labeled in Dart or anything, but just what I would label as simple data types. So first of all, we have integers. So we can create an integer int I equals 0, simple as that. The integer is actually only limited by RAM, so it doesn't matter. We can create super long integers, and it doesn't matter, how long they are. They're still going to be as long as we have enough RAM to support that integer, then we're fine. So there's no like cap on it, like with integer in Java that is only 32 bits and only goes up to, I think it's what, 247 billion, something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, something like that. So it's only limited by RAM, but it does have three possible types. So the integer can be of three possible types, and the Dart language itself will actually handle assigning the corresponding type to that integer. So the three types is SMI, or small integer, mint, or medium integer, and then big int, or big integer. So SMI is, I'm not 100% sure. It's up to, I think mint is 32 bits, but I'm not 100% sure. But the SMI is small, mint is medium, and then big is big. Big is not limited by anything, but we don't really have to worry about that too much, since Dart, the language, the virtual machine itself, is actually going to take care of that for us, so we don't actually need to worry about that. Okay, so that's the integer. The double. Pretty simple, just like in other languages. Decimal number, double I equals 1.0. This is going to be 64 bits, so it's up to that corresponding amount of decimal points. Okay, string. So string A equals hello world, a collection of UTF-16 characters. Can use single or double quotes. So yeah, in Dart, when we create a string, we can use either single or double quotes. It doesn't matter. It'll take everything as the same. Okay. There's also a UTF-32 string that's built in, but it's actually called a rune, and that's sort of its own thing. So we're not going to be going over that too much. But just know it exists if you want to use UTF-32 for whatever reason. Okay, finally we have Boolean for the simple data types. Boolean is also very simple, true or false. Bool A equals false, can be true or false. So yeah, very simple stuff. False and true obviously are keywords, as are all of these data types. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Let's look at some of the more complex data types. So the complex data types are going to be list, first of all. So a list is also very simple, so we have list. And in this example here, you can see that we have list. And then we use sort of like a generic syntax, so we're assigning it a generic, which makes sense since it is essentially a generic. We assign it int, so this is going to be a list of integers, and so we created list integer I equals 1, 2, 3. That's the list, how we create it with square brackets and then comma separated values. And that's actually going to create a growable list, which means that we can add and remove, well actually no, we can just add elements as necessary at runtime however we want. And then we can see we have another example of a list here after that, list I1, which is going to be instantiated. Instead of just giving it a list, we're going to say new list and then pass in 5 into that constructor. And what that's going to do, it's going to make the list fixed length, so we can't add new elements to it. It has a maximum of 5 elements, and we can't add more. And so yeah, so that's essentially the whole idea behind a list in Dart. Not too complex. There is just a little bit more that we can talk about, but nevertheless, it is pretty simple stuff. So a list, we can see here, a collection of elements can be growable or non-growable. So yeah, that's essentially the example that we have here. Okay, so the next data type that we have is map. So a map is we can see here, I wrote the definition, a collection of key value pairs. So yeah, it's pretty simple stuff. So it's just a collection of key value pairs. So in this case, we have map string integer. So the key is going to be a string, and the value is going to be an integer. What's important to know is that we do have maps that are ordered, and we do have maps that are unordered. I think that the if we just create a map like this, like we do here, it's just going to be an unordered map, and the order isn't preserved. So if we were to print it back, there's no guarantee that it's going to be printed back in the same order that we added the elements to it. So that's just, something to something to remember. There's also ordered map that is ordered by the how we inserted elements. So if we inserted an element first, it's going to give us the back of that element first. And then there's also a map that sorts elements by their values. So that's also something that's there, but that's diving a little bit more deeper into the data structure of Dart. So just for the sake of learning Flutter, all we really need to know is that we have this map. And if you get curious ever about the other types of map in Dart, then you can go ahead and take a look at that as well. The documentation is pretty good. Okay. And finally, the final data type that we have in Dart is dynamic. So here we can create a dynamic. So dynamic I equals 12. And you can see here that even since I equals 12, since it's a dynamic, we can actually change this value to I equals 1. And we can actually change its data type. So it specifies the value that can change type at runtime. So you can see here that if we were to have string I equals and then in parentheses 12, right, we wouldn't be able to change it to 1. It would give us an error. But since it's a dynamic, we can actually change it to 1. And so that itself is the whole idea of a dynamic in Dart. Okay, so those are all the data types. Now, let's very quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is really, I want to make this a Flutter course and a Dart course. So let's very quickly go ahead and take a look at programming in some of these data types, just very quickly, just to give you an idea about how exactly it works. All right, so here we are on our desktop here, and so here we have our app.dart file, which just contains my Mac OS seems my operating system seems to think that this is some kind of a DMG file or something, but it's not, so that's annoying. Anyway, before we do anything, we need to make sure that we actually upgrade Dart. So make sure you have the latest version installed, or you will actually get errors. So to go ahead and do this, just do brew upgrade Dart and then developer force. So I'll go ahead and do that. There we go. Okay, so right now I see that everything is up to date already. So in the previous episode, we actually installed Dart 1.5, 1.4, I think. Anyway, it was just, or maybe 1.6, I'm not entirely sure, but 1 point something, when we need to have 2.0 installed in order for this to actually work properly. So yeah, go ahead and do that, and that should upgrade it to 2.0, or to whatever version is actually relevant when you are watching this. Okay, so now that we went ahead and installed that, let's cd into desktop. Okay, and let's open app.dart application VS Code. All right, there we go. That's going to open that up, and there we go. Okay, so now that we're here, let's go ahead and remove this print and start actually doing some of this Dart programming. So let me make this sort of full screen so that you can actually see something instead of squinting. All right, and let me make that bigger. There we go. So now you should actually be able to see this stuff. I swear to God, oh God, I gotta, there we go. VS Code is kind of obnoxious with its whole, menu bars when you make the font bigger. Anyway, okay, so let's get started. We're gonna do int I equals 0, okay, and then just print I. All right, there we go. So now we're testing out the integers. We're still gonna speed through this. Let's do dart app.dart. There we go. Okay, there we go. We get 0, perfect. We can now do something like double I equals 0, and you're gonna see that what we're gonna get is an error. So we see that we get an error because double I equals 0 is an integer when we need to make this 0.0. So that's gonna make it a double. There we go. Or what makes more sense is to make it 1.0 that way. And there we go. So now we get 1.0. Looking good. So let's move on now. We can also do something like string I, and you can see if we have 1.0, it's going to give us an error here. We need to change this into a string, so let's just add quotation marks here. All right, there we go, 1.0, and we can also make these single quotation marks. That's going to have the same exact effect. So it doesn't matter what you use in Dart. There we go, looking good. Okay, and then finally we also have a Boolean. And the Boolean, we're going to assign it the value true. There we go, it's going to print true, and then if we assign it the value false, it's going to correspondingly print false. Okay, looking good. So that is all for sort of the simple data types. Now let's go over the more, complex data types. Okay, so I say complex, but they aren't really complex. I mean, let's be honest here. So we have a list I, we can do something. First of all, let's just make it an empty list. All right, and let's run that. There we go. We can see we get an empty list. We can do 1, 2, 3. We get 1, 2, 3. We can add a string in here, and you'll see that's going to be totally okay since the list is of dynamic type. But then if we do make it an int list, for example. Whoops, forgot how to type. There we go. You see that we get an error now because you have a string in here. There we go. So yeah, that's essentially the whole idea here. Okay, and then you're going to see here that, well, if we do I.add 4, that's going to be totally okay. Let's only make this 2 into a 2. There we go. Now you're going to see that that's going to be totally fine. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. No problems there. If, on the other hand, we do I equals new list 2, let's do 3, and then go ahead and do that. All right, so then let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. And now try to run it. You're going to see that we are actually getting an error because it's a fixed length list. And we are getting it at Dart 3. So this is at line, whoops, we got at line 3, huh? Right, so yeah, right now we're getting at line 3, which makes sense because we are adding it into the list and we can't actually add it because it's already got 3 values and we can only actually access those 3 values. So we can do I0 is equal to 1, and that's going to work fine. There we go. Let me go and remove all this. So we can go and access those 3 values. There we go. But we can't add anything to it because that would be adding in values, which we can't do to a fixed sized list. All right, there we go. You can see there that it gives us an error. All right. So we also have a map. We can do this. We also have maps. So we can go ahead and do a map here and then comma. All right, and then, oh my god, okay. All right, there we go. We can do map, and what am I doing? String is going to be a string, comma, int. And then for the map, we can just do, let's see, so A1, comma, B2, something like that. And you're going to see that when we print the map. There we go. We get A1, B2. Whoops, I actually had a terminal crash there. All right, there we go, but we're back. You get the idea. And if we want to put keys into the map, so add something to it, we just have to do I.put if absent, and then here we can do something like C, and then comma, and then here we have to do an arrow function, which we're going to be going over in a few lessons here, and then we can just do something like 3. All right, there we go, and let's just do app.dart. No, dart. And there we go. You can see now that it added C3. If, on the other hand, we try to do something like A3, we're going to get a different result in that it's not going to do anything since it's already there. So yeah, that's essentially the put if absent method. Okay. So that's the map. And then finally, let's go over the dynamic. So if we make I dynamic, you're going to see that it's going to be able to do whatever essentially it wants. So if we do dart app.dart, we're going to get A1, B2. There we go. We can also change this to be something like an integer that's also going to be dynamic. There we go. 1. We can do a list, and then that list is going to be 1, comma, A, comma, and then 1.3, comma, true, something like that. And then that's still going to work. There we go. You can see it still works. Okay. And that is actually all of the, well, essentially all of the data types in Dart, at least the important ones. And then next time we are going to be going over variables in Dart. So you may be asking yourself, wait, why are we going over variables after we went over data types? Well, the answer to that is that when you will see when we're going to be dealing with the dynamic, the difference between a dynamic value and a var value of, dynamic I and var I, there's a slight difference between them. And when we are going to go over them, it's important to know what dynamic is, and that's essentially a data type. So that's why we went over data types before we went over variables. But either way, next time we're going to be going over variables. Also, hopefully not as long of a lesson as this one, as this one is pretty long. But yeah, you get the idea. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling on here. I always ramble at the end of videos. And yeah, I'm going to see you next time. Till soon.